Welcome to the Crystal Zinn podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone. Welcome to the Crystal Zinn podcast. Today I have John Solleder with me. Hi, John.
Hi, Crystal. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. I'm actually really excited for this because I have some questions for you. So if I start rapid firing, just slow me down.
I was born and raised in New York, so
Yeah.
you can't go too fast. I've slowed down since I live in Texas, but yeah, I can. You ask them fast, I'll answer them fast. How's that?
I love that. So you're used to it.
Yeah.
So this podcast is mostly about uh, entrepreneurship, keeping yourself healthy, supplementation, kind of eradicating some myths surrounding what you need to do for supplementation in the world where we're inundated, and just some invaluable advice that I really wanted to pull out of John with all of his experience for us younger entrepreneurs and the things that the trends we're seeing, the things that are going on in the industry today, and just the emphasis in my podcast on wholeness and well-being, right? That internal kind of perspective. So thank you for being willing to be in this conversation. And I want to let you know the first thing I do on all of my podcasts is take about 60 seconds to tune in. So do you do meditation practice or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in a place where it's safe to do so, I'll just invite John and all the listeners to close your eyes, take an inward gaze, maybe just soften your gaze, and find that one breath where you observe all the way to the top of your inhale and all the way to the bottom of your exhale. Notice where you feel texture, restriction, vibration around the neck or shoulders. And the next time you breathe, imagine a white ball of light expanding from the center of your throat outwards. The next breath, a bright ball of white light in the center of your chest. Inhale, expand outward. And then on your own, in your own way, take 3 more breaths, creating space in your body or your mind. Relaxing the forehead, the jaw, the shoulders, and the palms of your hands. When you come to that final exhale, just maybe a little audible sigh, especially if you're listening and you're not in a public place. Just a little, and then come back on your inhale. Maybe blink your eyes open, rub your fingers, spread your toes. That's a practice in trust to be able to receive the external senses and move inward. And anytime we can build some self-trust, we feel safe. So thanks for doing that with me.
Thank you.
My first question is, in the world of creating your own businesses, entrepreneurship, all the success that you've had in different areas of your life, why, what's the one biggest thing you would say is the most important factor in being able to sustain all of that?
I think the realization very early on in my career that the number one thing I always needed to work on was John. not on a specific company, a specific product, a specific service, a specific event. It was always on me building my self-development from my reading, now listening to podcasts, constantly studying, constantly being interested in information, new information. The world's changed obviously in the last 42 years since I've been in business for myself, things like AI, cell phones for that matter. When we started in business, the phone was plugged into the wall. It was a big deal. I remember when they finally made a phone with a battery and you could walk around your house, talking on the phone. It was a big deal, or you could sit outside, on a nice day. Fax machines were something that just about were invented in the early 80s. I forget exactly when, but that was a big deal. So my point is all these things have developed, but I still always needed to work on the number one brand that I have, which is me.
Mm.
And how do I mean that? Well, early on in my career, I was introduced to some of the legendary self-development people. Some were still alive, by the way. I knew Jim Rohn, for example. I knew Zig Ziglar.
And I know you mentioned Jack LaLanne
Yeah,
once.
I met Jack a few times. Uh, you know, uh, um, Jay Kordich. I mean, all the health entrepreneurs as well as the business entrepreneurs. Many of them were still alive. People that we quote today freely that unfortunately have gone on to the next life. But at the end of the day, I started to study them religiously. And the ones that I could meet, I would pester them with questions as long as they'd let me until they, said, okay, I got to take the next person's question. You've asked your five, John. Let me get somebody else's question in here. I was tenacious about information, and I still am because I was always building my brand. One of the first books I ever read, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, for example, told me that it wasn't what I wanted to attract, it was what I was that I would attract. And there is a difference. We all want those people that live in better zip codes as clients. But at the end of the day, if I don't live in a better zip code, okay, and I don't think in a better zip code, then I'm not going to attract the type of people perhaps that I want to attract for whatever the business I happen to be in is. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale had a big effect on me. Okay, The Power of Positive Thinking was the very, very first book I ever read. Only by accident. I was in the hospital at the time recovering from back surgery, and I was 17. And my father gave me that book, and I read it. And to this day, here it is. I'll be 64 years old in May. So a long time ago, long before your parents even thought about you. And I'll never forget this quotation. If you think you have problems, go to the local funeral parlor or nursing home, and you'll realize whatever you have to deal with is not that big a deal. And it was like, it started to shape my thinking. So all the obstacles I had to overcome in my life, okay, early on and still to this day, I realized that the number one brand I was building was me. And I continued to work on me, and I continue to work on me to this day from a health standpoint, from a business standpoint, from an education standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, to a relationship standpoint, that you're always a work in progress. The work is never done till they close the proverbial lid on the box, then I guess it's done. But until that day, and hopefully not for a long time,
Yeah.
I'm always working on me.
Yeah. Or blow the ashes.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. And what's also fascinating is that some of these books and people that you're quoting and we're quoting have had this embodiment, like manifestation, what it's called now, sort of practice and ideas a long time ago. And a lot of times it seems new to us, right? Like it's new because of the pervasive technology and the way we can get those quick sound bites out now in technology. But it's not. And so that embodiment practice of you're not attracting what you want, you're attracting who you are is really powerful. And one thing that comes up all the time in, the circles I run in and the business, self-improvement work that we're constantly doing is the timing and the pace of it. And a lot of times this inadvertent or unconscious message is sent that if it's taking you too long to do it, that there's something wrong with you or you're not doing it correctly. Or like the thing you cited that seems really common and would resonate with a lot of my listeners, like, yes, maybe I want this certain caliber of client, but I can't afford to live in the houses they live in right now and drive the cars that they drive right now, and maybe even dine at the places they eat at right now. So one, how do I make peace with still moving in that direction and trying to get them, but then not being there yet. And then, like you said, the internal working on yourself and the John and, working on John and the character and who you are as the product and embodiment of whatever you're achieving, and not get down on that concept that, like, what's your opinion with the experience behind your belt and the time it takes to get there? And what's the mindset we should have during that period?
There's two answers, and I'll answer your second question first. 1983, when I went to my very first real business meeting in Hartford, Connecticut, the gentleman doing the meeting said these words: for things to change, you had to change, and for things to get better, you have to get better. Now, I thought at that point in my life, I was still under the illusion that the government had to get better, the president had to change, my parents had to change, my zip code needed to change, my sisters needed to change, my girlfriend needed to change. It was all about everything and everyone else. When I heard that guy say that, it turned out Jim Rohn wrote those words many years before, but it became something that I adopted, was that I needed to make the changes in me. I couldn't worry about the rest of the world. And if I look at my career now, all these years later, I've been through, I don't know, 7 or 8 US presidents and ups and downs and, recessions and, 9/11 and COVID and other things, 2008, economic situation that happened, right? I looked at all of that stuff and I say, the thing that's been consistent is my self-development. When I heard for things to change, it was like, wait a minute. It's an inside job. It's how I think. Okay. So that was one thing. And then I back up one step to your first question. 1983, at my college commencement, Ronald Reagan was the commencement speaker. And he talked about the fact that 1932, height of the Depression, he went back to the swimming hole that he had been a lifeguard at because he couldn't find a job. Well, 1983, coming out of the Carter disaster of a presidency, he was a horrible, great man, by the way, horrible president, horrible, oof, terrible, disaster economically for our country. Anyway, coming out of that, 1983 was the same. There were no jobs. Yeah, and by the way, your resume back then was funny. It was like your name and your telephone number. No email yet. I mean, this is like culture shock to some of your younger listeners. No Twitter account, no X account, no Instagram account, none of this stuff had been invented. Anyway, but what I heard Reagan say was the fact that in 32, when he went back to that swimming hole, he sought out the advice of a successful older man. To your question, how do you get to that better zip code? So here he was a young kid. He went to a guy who was already successful and he said, hey, I'm really struggling here. Help me out. And the guy said to him, look, here's what you need to do. And they used to call Reagan Dutch at that point, which made no sense, by the way, because he was Irish. So I don't know where Dutch came from, but that was his nickname. And I guess he looked like a Dutchman. But anyhow, that gentleman told President Reagan that you needed to find a mentor. You needed to find a business you were interested in. And a mentor, somebody to teach you that business. And in Reagan's case, he liked broadcasting. He liked to speak. And that led him eventually to become a broadcaster for a minor league baseball affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, I believe in Iowa, might have been in Illinois. And one thing led to another. Somebody heard him do a broadcast and they brought him out to California with Westinghouse, okay, and he became a broadcaster for Westinghouse doing commercials, right? TV was new then too, so I'm assuming these were all radio overviews. They liked his voice, good-looking guy, got screen tested eventually, got onto some movies, and eventually got interested in politics. And as they say, the rest is history. But what a great example of an older person in a better zip code. I'm sure that guy lived in a better zip code than the Reagan family. Said, hey, I'll help you out. I'll give you advice. So a lot of times people want to help you. Successful people want to help people to get better who want to get better. I don't mean welfare. I mean workfare, where somebody says, hey, I want to achieve. For example, I mentor a lot of young people. I've been mentoring one boy since he's 14, and he's just about to get his degree from the University of Houston in construction education, and then he's going to go on to Rice for his MBA and just killing it, just doing great. He's got an internship with a great company, and I've been mentoring this boy since he's 14. He was my son's hockey teammate, and he was interested in business even then and used to ask me questions, and I'd sit with him for hours answering this boy's questions, and now I'm watching him evolve. Well, that's something that we all need to take as a responsibility is to help that next generation to, be that they're younger, or maybe they don't have the economic means that some of us have, to quote unquote move to that better zip code by coaching, helping, educating, and mentoring people constantly. And I feel like that's kind of my role now as an older guy is hey, I'll mentor anybody who wants to be mentored, but they need to deserve it. And what I mean by deserve it is, if I say go and read Think and Grow Rich and let's talk about chapter 3, and a week later I call them and they haven't bought the book, well, we don't need to spend any more time discussing. Let's talk about the weather, because we don't need to talk about your self-development because you ignored what I asked you to do. But if they do it, then be prepared to have a real conversation with them in depth as to, what was meant in that particular chapter, which I have no idea, by the way, what's in that chapter. I have read the book many times, but, I couldn't tell you verbatim. But my point is, it's like if you give them a simple task, ask them to fulfill that task, because it shows that they're serious about the guidance that you're giving them. And then you can talk about that and give them the next task.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And it's such a good reminder too, because being in the middle of an experience like that, I think, at least for me, I haven't always recognized what it was at the time. And so that's really powerful. And I think I told you that in the Eastern kind of cultural world, and when I've studied Tai Chi and yoga and a lot of these energetic modalities, that's the way, that's actually the only way. And it's the only way you become legitimate, is you have your teacher and you have your guru. So there's really no amount of study or certifications that you can get that someone's going to actually think that you are a worthy practitioner in the space unless you have a mentor. And that's how we kind of write, instead of writing down our certifications or the university we go to, we write down our lineages, right? Like I studied with Patabi Joyce in the 90s, or, whatever it was. He actually passed away in the 90s, but I go through Tim Miller lineage, or I learned my Reiki through Takata in Japan. And so it actually is a very mentorship, guru driven. And that's, I think, where all the value lies, because at every point you're getting feedback, right? You're not just doing this stuff on your own. You're trying something and then you're wrong, and your mentor is helping massage you and fix you and give you this advice, and like knows you personally, and where your weaknesses are and where you can strive. And so I love that, because there are so many people that are hungry. I might be a little older than you think I am, but that infamous year you always talk about, 1983, that's when I was born.
Okay.
And so, I want to give myself a little bit of credit, but in my 30s, I did have a lot of opportunity to mentor younger people in their teens and 20s coming up, and just the little bit of tenure experience I had ahead of them. And I can echo what you're saying now that you reminded me of it. It's the ones who are calling me, asking me questions, showing up, trying to help facilitate, diving into the books I would mention, the gurus I had studied with. Those are the ones I handed opportunities to as well. So it also feels like such a brilliant way. It's breaking my mind and my heart open again when I re-enter the business space. What do I want? And who's there to teach me, and who's already achieved it? Because the opportunities, are just right there on their coattails as well when they see you're working hard for it. And
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, yeah, no, say what you were going to say, because I had another subject.
I just want to add to that, because I did a lot of different sports, but they were all generally combat sports. But judo was my favorite of everything I ever did. I loved judo, probably because of the Japanese traditions involved with it. But to this day, both of my great senseis, Ogasawara and Tamura, have passed away. But I quote both of those guys to my kids, to people I mentor in business. And I think of lessons, and neither one was a wealthy man. Neither one of them, had some other business where they made, gazillions of dollars. They were judo guys, and they both had other professions. But at the end of the day, that was their thing. And I think of their philosophies that they taught that had nothing to do with judo, but they had to do with life. And I think in some of my difficult times that I go back, just like you do with what you just said there, where you draw on these other people's experiences. They may not be living at this time, but you think about some of their wisdom that they passed along, that they've given to us as a gift. that we then can impart on that next generation of people, be it in business or be it in however we're dealing with them. So yeah, I love what you said, and just wanted to add to it because it's a great point.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And my mind kind of went to one, what are the many ways that you can measure success, and like what are the top couple for you, because the examples we were using were monetary and financial, and also in a lot of people I mentor in the world I work in, and some of my ambitions are not always financial as well. And so with the perspective you have, if I were to say, where should my compass be? How much importance should I put on these things so that later on I can be sitting where you're sitting and going, I was accurate in where I was measuring success and I feel good now.
Wow, that's a heavy question. A
That is.
couple of ways. First of all, if my life ended today and I looked at my business career, couple of things stand out to me. Number one, have I mentored the next generation?
Mm.
And yes, I have. There are people that I've taught all over the world, both directly and indirectly through my books, through my podcasts, through my trainings, through my video stuff, through my Zoomtaculars that I created during COVID, for
Yeah.
example. Where there's people who quote me, like I quote Jim Rohn. There's people who quote me. Okay, not to the same degree as Jim Rohn, but there's people who quote me. But more importantly, they adopted some of those skill sets that have helped them to do things like send their kids to a better school, give their families opportunities maybe that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Um, I'll give you one example, like my lawyer. Okay, now his mother, I've known him since he's 4. Okay, my attorney, my personal attorney, and real proud of him. Everything he's done in his life, just an outstanding man. I can't say young man anymore. He just turned 40. But anyway, I've known him since he's 4. His mom was a single mom when I met her. I mentored her in the direct selling business. She became incredibly successful, not even with the company I was with. The company I was with, she did well. She left that company, went to another company, became one of the top distributors. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years back. Very dear friend of mine, but her son has done so great. And I'm like, well, if I hadn't taught Arlene, she may not have been able to provide the opportunities for Jordan to become not only a great lawyer, and he's a great lawyer, he's very, very good at what he does, but at the end of the day, he's also a great dad. He's also a great husband. He's also a great mentor. He helps kids with soccer, in some cases, kids that are underprivileged up in the Pittsburgh area. That's one of many examples that I look at that it's like, okay, if tomorrow I took my last breath, there's people that will say, Solleder helped me with this or that, or he helped my mom in that case, and because of that, I was helped. To me, that's really, really important that we help people. Because, we're all getting out of here the same way. Box or an urn is basically the way that you're leaving. Okay. Just in case nobody knew that. Okay. There's been over 100 billion people on the planet. Nobody's gotten out alive yet. So the reality is, you want to leave things behind. That's number one. Number two, my own kids. My own kids have been raised around self-development, and they have had challenges in their lives. Okay. And my oldest daughter, unfortunately, she went through an episode with drug addiction. I'm not proud of this, but I don't hide from it either, because sometimes people look at guys like me and they go, he's at the top of his company. He doesn't have any problems. Bull.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. My daughter, unfortunately, got in with the wrong people. She got involved with a very deadly drug, crystal meth, almost died. We had to institutionalize her for 2 months. And fortunately, we had the means to put her in a very good place. And she came out of that. And what's interesting is this. When I picked her up, and you pick your kid up after something like that, and boy, it's your heart's in your throat, because you don't know how their reaction is going to be. They're mad at you for putting them there in the first place. On the other hand, my daughter was smart enough to, by the way, and I'm proud of her, she's never went back to this stuff. And she's beat it. She's got a great life going now. She's healthy physically, mentally, spiritually. But she said to me, Dad, I know what you're going to say. Day at a time, brick at a time, process by process is how we're going to beat this thing. How many times did she hear me say that in doing training classes? How do you build a business? Day at a time, brick at a time, process by process, same way this building was built, right? I would tell thousands of distributors. Well, most importantly, that one little set of ears heard that. And when she went through something much more serious than building a business, she applied those self-development principles in her life. And she still does every single day, because drug addiction, alcoholism, these are, unfortunately, you might beat it, but it's still there. Okay. You live with it every day. Fortunately, me personally, I never had either of those situations, but I've watched what she's done. Okay. So once again, you don't know that there's not a mom or dad sitting in your audience that hears something like that. Here's her story, or here's day at a time, brick at a time, process by process, and they're dealing with their own addiction issue. They're dealing with their own child's addiction issue, or something else much more serious than just making money. If we put everything in economic terms, there's no reason for anybody to do business. The reason to do business and build businesses to affect people in a positive way, to give them something that maybe they couldn't get on their own, or get them on a path that changes their life for the better and maybe changes their family's life for the better generationally. And that's what I'm proud of when I look back at my 42 years, is I know that there's thousands of people around the planet that we've affected in a positive way. And we're not done yet. We got more to go. God
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah.
Hopefully. You never know. I think we do anyway. I'm taking good care of myself, you know.
Plan accordingly. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I love that. And what I hear you saying is, no matter what the venue or what's actually happening on the surface, building a business, the different variations in that, the height or width of whatever that, if there's this underlying importance of changing people's lives for the better and personal development, no matter what happens in that, you've still got the gold, the density, like it's still going to perpetrate positive ripples forward in people's opportunities in their lives. And I think what I hear you saying is, if it's void of that, then that truly is something that's not sustainable. Nobody's going to quote you. It won't have done good. And when you're sitting there at the end of the day, you won't really have something to be proud of. And if it does have that, no matter which way it goes or where you achieve your success, you're going to feel good about it, because those are the things that are lasting, is the personal change and the personal development. And that just makes me feel so good, especially on the days where you're not seeing a lot of effect, in the physical world, or something, isn't measuring up to success in the way you wanted it to over here. You can fall back on those things, the brick by brick, the building, and that applies outward. And even that's just an incredible story with your daughter, even in a time where she probably couldn't remember a lot and didn't have, like, a lot of my work actually is in addiction recoveries. So I have some deep, intimate knowledge of those processes and what it's like to be in those places and go through that. And I know you're in a place where you cannot remember a lot and not a lot matters. And at that moment, she remembered, the stoicism and the confidence and the way we do this, right? No matter what it is. And so that really resonates with me, and brings, an importance and kind of like a endurance aspect to all of these things when you're in the middle of a build or raising your young family or both, So I really love that advice. And it brings me to the other question that I love your perspective on, which is, we would be remiss to say that any of this is easy or doesn't have its pitfalls or doesn't require a lot of really difficult choices and time management and, how do I get myself to perform at that level in all areas of my life, and that sustainability as well, which is like the physical health and the supplementation. And I really wanted to ask you your perspective on this, because last night at a gathering I facilitated, we were talking about some of these really heightened principles in self-development and spirituality and business. And one of the ladies there said, I love this quote that says, mundane before magical. When you get overwhelmed, when you get out of alignment, it's not a lot of these like business strategies or spiritual practices, or I just need more of this, this, this. And I'm demonstrating with my hands because they're concepts that seem a little overwhelming or above you or beyond your knowledge at the time. But if you go back to mundane before magical, you can't do anything unless your baseline is fulfilled, you're healthy, all of these disciplinary practices that sounds like, since you're a judo guy, you really understand. No one's better at discipline than the Japanese.
Have you been looking for the adventure of a lifetime? Join me, Elizabeth, and Rachel this June in stunning Sardinia, Italy for a yoga and adventure retreat. My heart has been calling me to this part of the world for a really long time. Connect with your mind, body, and spirit while exploring breathtaking landscapes, rock climbing, boating trips, and more. Early bird pricing is available until January 31st, 2025. Email me, visit my website, or check out my Instagram at Crystals in Yoga for more details. Let's make magic together in Sardinia.
The question is, how do we sustain ourselves through this process, which it can be rigorous and it can be a big ask, of course.
Well, it's a terrific question. I'll break it down a couple of different ways because there's no right or wrong answer. But first of all, besides my faith, again, my family, my health is the most important thing. Not my finances. Now, people find that hard to believe because they're like, you made a lot of money in your life and you've built these companies and built these brands. Yeah, all true. At the end of the day, okay, I've never had my eye off of being healthy. Now, let me backtrack. When I was a young athlete, okay, I was playing football. I got hit in my lower back. And boy, something just gave. I went to the sideline. I had to lay on my back and grab my right leg, and it was in tremendous pain. And I thought I got injured. It turns out I had gotten injured, but I was born with a disease called spondylolisthesis, where your vertebrae are basically wrapped around your spinal cord like this. It was taking my right side and actually paralyzing it. So it's like, okay, I got all of these ambitions to play professional football at that time, and I'm a big kid, by the way. I'm 6'1", 220 pounds in high school, and I was strong. I was benching over 300 in ninth grade. Okay, I mean, just like crazy. No, and I was dedicated, by the way, between football and wrestling. I was very, very dedicated, but more so to football. Anyway, I got hurt. And of course, the doctors said, "Well, that's the end of football. Wrestling was a different story. I could still wrestle, but that even that was going to be a big time rehab thing, which it was." And I won't take your listeners' time on that because it's not that important. But what that did was, I realized all of a sudden your health could be taken away from you. Never realized that. Yeah, you're 16 or 17. You're Superman. You know what I mean? Like, you can do anything. And I fell in with some bad habits for about 2 years. Okay. I never smoked, never liked smoking, but I started drinking. It's like, oh, well, hey, can't play sports. Might as well, go out on Friday night and, still going to the gym. And might as well go to hang out with my friends. And I did for about 2 years. And my 20th birthday, I looked at my father, who had been an alcoholic previously. I had given it up at that point. But I said, I don't want to end up like him, because he was already an old man. He was only in his 50s. But between drinking and smoking, I realized he wasn't going to live long. And at that point, I was 20 years old. I remember that it was like a solar Tarsus moment for your listeners who are Christians or Jewish, for that matter. The solar Tarsus moment there, where the lightning bolt hit you, And I said, man, I do not want to be like that. My dad's not happy. He's sick all the time. He already had major heart problems. And anyway, I don't want to live my life like that. So I got really, really focused on my health. Like, literally the day after my 20th birthday was the day when I said, I'm never going to drink again. I never have. I never smoked to begin with, thank God. Never did drugs. Okay. Never did steroids, by the way. I had them offered to me many times during my athletic career, but I just always declined them, because I thought, not only was it cheating, but what do you do with your liver long term? Like great. So you win some extra tournaments and get some extra medals. And I'm in non-money sports, by the way.
Yeah.
Like what do I do with my liver down the road? I understood that was a big risk, and I knew guys who did them that do have problems, and some unfortunately aren't with us anymore because they did do them. So anyway, I almost just went the natural way. Fortunately, the first business I got in was a health nutrition business. A guy that got me into it was a world-class wrestler, a guy named Tommy Husted, and his sponsor, Dave Brzezinski's in the U.S. Wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, these guys were great at their sport. And I also had this focus on health, not only supplementation, but as I got older, I realized that, life was a marathon, not a sprint. And business was a marathon, not a sprint. And that when you go through, when everything's going well, it's really easy to do everything. It's easy to get out of bed in the morning. It's easy to train because you've got momentum in your life, because you got momentum in your business. Well, what about when you don't have momentum in your life and your business?
Yeah.
That's when you really got to suck it up and train, and not just at the gym. I shared with you the other day, Crystal, a great statement that the great Jack LaLanne made. And you met Jack, and I've met Jack at one point as well. And Jack had a great statement. He said, and I may screw this up and get it backwards, okay, but nutrition is king, exercise is queen. You put them together, you have a kingdom.
Mhm.
Well, I heard Jack say that when I was in my 20s at a seminar out in California. And I said, man, I mean, and by the way, even then he was about 75 and he was a beast. I mean, he was physically unbelievable. But I said, that's where I want to live my life. Okay. And I didn't always. At one point in my life, I got very heavy when I first had my kids. I retired from judo and I was working out, but it was kind of like, my wife didn't finish something, I finished it. You've had kids. I mean, it's like, yeah. And but all of a sudden I said, you know what, even though I was training and I was still, going to the dojo a couple days a week, fooling around on the mat, I said, this isn't good. So about 8 years ago, I decided to change my diet dramatically. Okay. Now, if you looked at me, and I live in Dallas, Texas, right? I mean, we are right smack in the middle of beef country here. You would think this guy's probably eating chicken and ribs and beef every day. No, eight years ago, I was having dinner. My son was playing hockey that night, and he was warming up, and I went over to eat dinner, and I was eating a 4 cheeseburger. And I said, it's probably not really good for me. Like, I know with nutrition, this is probably not good for my arteries. And the next day I said, I'm going to go vegetarian. And I did for one day. I said, I'm going to go one day vegetarian, no meat for one day.
Yeah.
And it was a Friday night. So this was Saturday. I got to Sunday and I said, I feel pretty good. Sunday, I'm not going to eat any meat either. I'm still eating fish at that point.
Yeah.
And I went about, this was October 18th of 8 years ago, whatever that is. Now, what are we in 25? So 17. And about 2 weeks later, I saw the documentary. This is funny how God works or the universe works or whatever you believe works. But I'm at the gym and I'm on the treadmill. And I don't remember whose talk show it was, but there's these guys that come out and they showed them before, and they were very, very large men. And all of a sudden they showed them and they're very in shape. Turns out they started a running club in Louisiana. And the one guy referenced a documentary called Forks Over Knives. And it was on Netflix. So I came home. I said to my wife, of course, I got it backwards. I said, I think it's knives over forks or something. And she goes, no, I think it's forks over knives. She said, I've seen it advertised. Let's watch it. So that night we did. And first time I ever heard of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn or Dr. Colin Campbell or some of the other people, Dr. Michael Greger, some of the people who I follow religiously now, right? By the way, two of which are now in their 90s and still giving seminars around the world. Okay. So this isn't just, do as I say. These guys are doing it themselves and they're extremely fit, older guys. But I said, okay, I'm on the right path. And then a year ago, January, I went vegan, 100% vegan. Not 100% raw. I'm about 90% raw. I occasionally do eat cooked food. And I know if you got raw vegans listening, they're like going, oh my God, you shouldn't say that. But yeah, once in a while, I do have a weak moment. I go to lunch with somebody and I will eat a little cooked vegetables, by the way.
Yeah.
And but I adopted that lifestyle. And not only did it help me to lose about another 25 pounds of body weight. Okay, so it leaned me out. But more than that, because I do suffer from arthritis from my athletic career, I've got bad hips, I've had shoulder surgery, I've had, more surgeries than I want to get into, but it's helped me with my mobility as I've gotten, into my 60s here. I feel just much more mobile. But to answer another part of your question, why is it important? Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said thousands of years ago that your mind is your second stomach. So if I put McDonald's, French fries, Starbucks coffee, and all this other junk in my body, sorry to those brands, I apologize. Sue me if you want. You sell garbage. You are not good for people. Okay, you make a lot of money.
Not the worst offending documentary on them.
Yeah, you make a lot of money at other people's expense. But then again, I do believe in independence. Hey, people, you have a right not to consume those products. But anyway, all that said, I don't mean to pick on those companies, but my point is this, okay? If you're putting junk in your stomach, how do you expect this muscle to work? This muscle is no different than this muscle, okay? Put good, healthy stuff in your gut, and it'll feed your mind, okay? Your mind is going to become that much clearer the less you clog it, okay, with saturated fat, okay, and processed food. Processed food is the worst thing on the planet, by the way. God bless Bobby Kennedy, because he's going to do some great things for this country and for our health. But you know what? At the end of the day, no matter what he does, if you still choose to eat the junk, that's on you. That's not on him or the government. Okay. Getting
I
fluoride
live
out
in,
of water,
I think
all
one of the
those things.
first states where
Oh, you're in
they
Utah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in Utah, so he actually got some laws passed here first.
Yeah. I saw fluoride's out of your water there. I already saw that.
And school lunches can't have processed food in them.
Guy, well, you know what? Great. And you live in a state, but I've always admired your state because the people there are healthy. They're outside, they exercise a lot, they're very healthy people. Uh,
Yeah.
but to that point, at the end of the day, look, we all have choices, right? You know, some people smoke. Most people have figured out that's not good for you. But you go back in time, and this is interesting. I love old movies. Like I'd rather watch, you know, Casablanca than I would a new movie, for example. Okay. Or anything with James Cagney in it, who, by the way, was a judoka. Okay. He helped to bring judo along with Theodore Roosevelt. They both had a role in getting judo over here in the United States in a big way. But anyway, so I love these old movies. But if you watch, with the exception of a couple of famous actors like Orson Welles, for example, and there's one or two others that were heavy. For the most part, they weren't. Now, they smoked like chimneys even in the shows, right? They're puffing away and sometimes they're drinking a cocktail, but they weren't overweight. And if you go back and you say in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, processed food hadn't been invented. So even if they were eating a steak, they were eating a steak off a farm somewhere that had probably been, you know, butchered in the last 24 to 48 hours. They weren't eating something that was put on a truck in Los Angeles and shipped to New York and freeze dried and eaten a month later, right? So at the end of the day, we wonder why our school kids are as unhealthy as they are. Occasionally, I'll go throw shot put and discus at a local, like a middle school, seventh and eighth graders. And I watch some of these kids walk around the track, of course, with their cell phone in their ear. That's one problem. But the other problem is I look at them and I think they look unhealthy because they're eating processed food every single day, right? They go from gym class back inside and they're eating processed food. We got to get people off processed food. We got to get you back to whole foods. Even, by the way, I'm not saying everybody needs to go vegan or vegetarian. Those are all personal choices. Okay. I have friends that are carnivores. My own wife is a carnivore. So be it. Okay. They've got their reasons. You do what you want to do. This is not I'm not on a soapbox with this stuff. This worked for me. Well, it may work for you. Well, maybe something else works for you, but processed food, I can assure you, doesn't work well. And by the way, there's processed vegetarian and vegan food. Okay, that you shouldn't eat either. If you're on this side of the equation, don't think because they put, you know, there's no meat in it, there can still be a lot of unhealthy stuff. So get back to nature. Okay, there's nothing like taking a honeydew, a cantaloupe, a watermelon, because it's contained in its own protection, right? That skin is protecting it, and you're getting the best elements of it, the live foods into your body. You go back to other mentors that you and I both had, you know, Jack LaLanne being one of them, Jay Kordich being another one, Dr. Gerson being another one, all the great luminaries, if you will, of health. And they all preached about what? Live foods, right? Dead food, dead body. Live foods, live body. Plain and simple. So, yeah, all of it works hand in hand. And in my business career, it's like, you know, I have friends that are retiring and they're sick and they're like, how come you're still going so strong? I'm like, first of all, I'll tell you how old I am because I don't care, because it's just a number on my license.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a powerlifting meet next Saturday. Okay. I'm still lifting weights competitively. I'm still in the gym 6 days a week. I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. I'm at the gym most days before the sun is up, and I normally try to get home here before the sun, you know, is in the sky. Some days, you know, some days I'm a little later. I get a business call or something from Europe, and, you know, maybe I have to deal with something early in the morning business wise, but get up early. Ayurvedic medicine. Okay. The ancient wisdom of the Indian people, for example, okay, tells you that your body clock, okay, your circadian rhythms are set a certain way. Go to bed early, get up early if you can. Now, I get some people, they have to work, you know, different hours. Like I respect that. But if you can go to bed early, get up naturally. About 90 minutes before the sun gets up is when we're supposed to get up. Okay. Well, that's 4:30 in the morning. Now, if you're an entrepreneur like you and I are, Crystal, you know that brain starts kicking in about that time.
Yeah.
Well, what good is it to lay in bed and go like this for an hour and a half because, well, it doesn't, I'm not supposed to be up yet because the rest of the world's not. That's the time to get a lot done that the rest of the world isn't going to do. Every successful person I've ever known, by the way, gets up early. Now, I'm sure somebody's listening and saying, well, I get up late and I'm successful. Hey, good for you. But for the most part, as a rule, go to bed early, get your rest because you need it so you can attack the day. Okay. And get up early because give yourself that free time when the kids aren't up yet, where the spouse isn't up yet, maybe where you've got work to do that you need to do solely. Spend that time with your meditation, spend that time in scripture, spend that time, your time of the day that you can not be, and spend that time, obviously, exercising, before the rest of the world. Because honestly, it gives you a distinct advantage. And I've been religious about that over the years too. I mean, I'm a gym rat. I go on conventions with my company and they're like, yeah, they're having a big party. They know they won't find me because I'm in bed, but they know where to find me. 5:30 in the morning. Well, you want to find me, go to the gym. You're not going to find me at the bar, but you will find me at the gym, So anyway, you'll find me with a bar in my hands, not a bar that I'll be sitting at.
Yes, and at a different time. I love that so much because it's such age-old wisdom and people can hear it 1,000 times. And until they just something pushes them over the edge to try it or embody it, I absolutely can notice such a huge difference. And even when I'm going through a stint of a couple months where I'm not doing those practices or something, it's not because I don't think it's important. I will tell you every day, I should have. I wish I had. I noticed such a huge difference in my first training in 2007 with Ashtanga, with the fathers of Ashtanga yoga and the people who brought it over through San Francisco, like in the 80s. That was the practice, that was the discipline. So the prescribed body movement, right, happens in the morning and at night for 90 minutes, and it starts at 4:30 a.m. And so as you're studying this, it was required for you to just incorporate that into your life. And I can always, like, I can remember the things I participated in those times, like the texture of life at that time, like, was so abundant, and I learned and grew so much. And then again, when I was practicing Aquarian Sadhana student, which is a Kundalini practice from the Middle East, actually. And that is the same practice. It's a 2-hour meditation every morning, and it starts at 4 a.m. Vipassana does the same thing. If you're a Vipassana student or go through that lineage, 4 a.m., 90 minutes to 2 hours every single day. And it's just because it works. It works with our circadian rhythms. It works if you have any belief system in astrology or Vedic astrology or anything like that. There's a lot of stuff out there that is actually now scientific based at that time of day, no matter what hemisphere you live in, actually. And just from personal experience, I just love that you do that because I see it in the fitness world all the time. They seem to know it. I think anybody in tune with your body and who wants to make, max efficiency and have access to more of their systems, once you start a practice like that, you realize that things have come alive in you and things are available to you that just have never been before. And then when you fall off it, you feel the contrast. Like, I think this podcast is so beautiful for me in my life right now. So thank you again for that, because I've been going 2 or 3 months without the mundane before the magical, without incorporating a lot of these things that I know and, just need to be shaken into doing it again, because it's huge. And I think even if you fall off, right, sustainability over, like you said, the long period of time, what you said earlier, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's also encouraging to be able to get back on and do it again. And there are rest periods, there are periods where injuries have to be nursed. And so maybe you don't have to be on 100% with your business and your body all the time. But if that's your goal, and maybe 80 or 90% of the time you're hitting the mark, it sounds like what you're saying is it's more sustainable. If your body's healthy and your mind is healthy. I love this, by the way. In the anatomy I teach, we always say your stomach is your second brain, but you said your brain is your second stomach. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant to really drive home the point, right?
That's Hippocrates said that, by the way, lots more than I am. But
Yeah.
But when
I
I got
didn't know that.
well, when I got that, Okay, and
Wow.
I had read a lot of stuff because I'm also very into like glutathione, for example, is my main business. I market a glutathione product that was
Yeah.
developed at Yale, and the main professor who developed that product, Dr. Gustavo Bunos, had been studying Hippocrates over in at the Vatican Library, what he said about the human immune system. So he told me that 28 years ago. I was like,
Oh,
that makes sense, and I've since read, it said by Hippocrates numerous times. But the point is, once again, right? It's like computers, right? If you put garbage in, garbage comes out, right? Our bodies are no different. We're this grand design, okay, by the Almighty that created us, okay, and then He created us to take in good stuff. Now that doesn't mean we're going to live forever, but why not live with abundance? Okay, and abundance isn't that you live in the biggest house or drive the fanciest car. If you do, great. But that's not the real abundance, okay? The real abundance, if you look on the other side of this, and this was something, I go back to Forks Over Knives, for example, and I heard Dr. Esselstyn say this, and it made so much sense. 1939, when the Germans rolled into Norway, and they told the farmers, "Hey, we're going to take your pigs and your your chickens and your cows, and we're gonna like they're for us, and we'll let your family live basically if you continue to farm, and you could have the root vegetables." Well, what happened, if you look at that bell curve that he talks about, is the heart disease and the cancer in Norway went right down. 1944, right? We show up, we send those nasty Nazis home once and for all. That was a good thing, but here was the bad thing. They start eating the chickens and the cows and the pigs, and all of a sudden, what happens? Their heart disease and their cancer gets back on the same rate as ours, as the United States. Well, do you think there's a correlation? Right? You are what you eat. Okay. And so, one of many. So, I just look at the science on this stuff, and I'm not a scientific person by any stretch of the imagination. But when I look at the science, but I also look at another thing, and that is longevity, because we have so much information today that did not exist even 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we have so many what would you call it? Clinical trials, okay, that exist on different things. But the greatest clinical trial is us. If it works for you, continue to do it, right? If you continue to exercise and you feel good and you're productive in your life and you're productive in your business and you're productive leading your family, why wouldn't you do it for the rest of your life? Let's talk about resistance training for a second, because I know you're obviously a participant and a fan and a promoter of resistance training. I was interviewing a guy from the University of Laval University up in Quebec a couple of years ago, and he's an exercise physiology, professor. And he said, once you get past 50, the most important exercise you do is resistance training. Well, how many people think, well, I'm not a football player anymore. I'm not a rugby player. I'm not a hockey player. I'm not a whatever. I'm going to stop lifting weights as they get older. No, the opposite. You need to lift more weights. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go in and bench press 500. Okay. It doesn't mean you need to go in and hurt yourself and try to squat, some crazy amount of weight, but it means that you find things that you can do to move your body, okay, with resistance, be it bands, be it weights, be it farmers walks, be it kettlebells, be it whatever it happens to be. I pick up. This is funny. My son always says to me, Dad, you're always picking up more junk. I've got an old Chevy Silverado, and I looked outside for a second because it's in the front of my office here. I got all these fancy cars, and I got this old Chevy Silverado that I nurse back to health constantly.
Yeah.
Why do I have it? Because every time I see a building being constructed, I know that they're going to have bricks, cinder blocks, pipes, things that I can throw in the back that I can lift. I have no idea what they weigh. But what this is my outdoor gym. Sometimes I'll go to a park on a nice day and I'll go, I don't want to go to the gym, the physical gym, but I'll go to a park, for example, with that stuff. And I'll do some farmers walks with them, for example. I'll do some curls with them. I'll do some cinder block walks with them, right? Make you strong and great for your shoulders, by the way. But my point is this, there's no excuse not to train. Because even if you say, I can't get to the gym,
Yeah.
find some stuff like that, stick it in a corner of your backyard, okay? And 9 o'clock at night, you go, okay, I've had a long day. go out and lift something, go out and carry something, go out and move your body 15, 20 minutes. You don't have to be out there all night. Okay. Find a reason to work out where you don't have to do it formally. My friend Scott Erickson, best shot putter in the world for 60 to 64-year-olds and discus thrower for that matter. Scott has a great terminology that he uses, which is micro workouts. Because he's a computer guy, he's an engineer on top of being an athlete. He's an engineer, and so a lot of times he's on the internet for 10 hours at a time doing work. And what he does is he'll just find something, stretchy bands, for example. He'll have some in his office and just 5-6 minutes, just do a little quick workout, for example. Just move the body. Anyway, all these things are things that you learn from other people that you adopt to your own life, and you go, hey, wow, they work, right? I'm not saying, hey, you got to go to the gym and you got to run on the treadmill for 2 hours. It's like, no, go walk your dog.
Well, two things, John, two things I like really love about that is one, if you think about people who are at home, the person that's at home raising the kids and doing the house stuff, they're getting those micro workouts all the time, picking up the dog, picking up the kids, moving the trampoline, and the person who's at work in their office, I think has to put in a greater effort, right, to get those things done. And two, I think you just uncovered like a huge untapped business model that that has not pervaded the fitness industry yet, which is like could be called the cinder block workout. I mean, you could patent and market like selling people cinder blocks and pipes and walking in the park, like it's so simple. And now that you said it and a lot of people hear it, if the next big thing I see is like buy your cinder blocks here and do the John Solleder workout, you're gonna be the next because it's and it's awesome. And I can picture you doing that and just being like, yeah, like it's just this like get it done grit. And I wonder if you have time to answer this last question,
Yeah.
which I wanted to get to, which could you give us like a simple way to understand that supplement, glutathione? Is that the one?
Yeah.
And your just general opinion on supplementation, because we are inundated with it and there is a lot of information out there that even when we're eating raw and healthy, it's still hard to get products that were grown in nutrient dense soil, that has the building components that our bodies really need. And I think that would be so beneficial for us to hear from you.
Well, glutathione is in every cell in our body. Okay. Like God put it there. Okay. It's in every cell in our body. It's most prevalent in our liver, the whites of our eyes, and our lung tissue. And as we age, it comes down automatically from pollution, bad food, bad water, etc. Okay, so by supplementing it, you can raise it back up. So I've been instrumental in taking I didn't develop the product. It's been developed 50 years ago by two professors at McGill and then a third one from the German National Cancer Institute with a specific product. I won't name the product. You can get in touch with me. I'll tell you about the product, folks. Okay, but basically, I don't want you going to Amazon and buying it because you won't get any service. By the way, you got to buy it from somebody like me that sells it for a living and knows about it. But anyway, 91 patents on a specific product. Okay, for the immune system, raising cellular glutathione. It's very, very important, especially as we age. Okay. If you don't take our product, there are other alternatives. Okay, I can't recommend any. Ours is frankly the Rolls Royce of the glutathione space, but glutathione is really, really important. Okay, a couple of other things that I think are really, really important besides obviously good food in terms of the supplementation market is anything that is fiber driven. Okay, like if you're going to take another supplement, take something that's got fiber in it. Okay, you've got to eliminate. You've got to move your bowels. Okay, we do not go to the bathroom enough in America. I don't want to be gross about this, but we got to go to the bathroom. You got to get this stuff out of your villi. Okay. The other thing I would recommend to people is, okay, and this might sound a little crazy, and I hope I don't get anybody too nuts on here, but you got to investigate water fasting. Water fasting is a game changer. I've done a 21-day water fast last June. By the way, these have to be supervised. You do not just not eat at home for 21 days. You might die. Okay. You got to be supervised, your blood pressure, your vital signs, etc. Okay. But I did 21 days. It was a game changer. Okay. Now what basically happens is that your body goes through what's called autophagy. All right, where basically you start to release a lot of this stuff that's been caked in your villi for years and your intestines for years. Okay, the caked food, the processed food, stuff you ate years ago. You got to get that stuff out of you, plain and simple. And there's no better way to do it than water fasting. But find somebody supervised. There's supervision of water fasting all over the world now. Okay, find somebody in your state that does it professionally that can walk you through it. You don't have to do 21 days, by the way. 21 days is extreme. You could in 3 days you can accomplish a lot, but give your body a rest, because the other thing is rest. We sleep to rest our bodies, right? You know, we do other things to rest our bodies. We get massages. We do all these other great things, but sometimes you got to just give your body, you know, kind of a couple of days off, and that's what happens when you water fast. So I'm a firm believer that in any good health regimen, you know, not fun. I'm not going to tell you fasting's fun. There's nothing fun about it. You've done it, Crystal. Okay, there's nothing fun about it. But at the end of the day, boy, when you're done, you just feel like wow, and your body just says thank you, thank you, thank you, and a lot of things happen at the cellular level that are just really, really good for your body. So I would highly promote that as well. The True North people out in California, okay, those guys are the masters of it. They've been doing it over 40 years, supervised. They're all doctors out there. So plenty of places you can find out about that as well. But if you want to know more about glutathione, you can contact me. Just send me a text at 972 259-0875. Or you can always go up to my website and get a hold of me at johnsolleder.com also. Yeah, I believe in glutathione. I don't believe in over supplementation, by the way. And what I mean by over supplementation is there was a time in my life where I had a pill box and it had every pill imaginable in it. I'm not that way anymore. As I've gotten older, I realized the food is more important than the supplementation. And let's face it, the supplementation industry, like the drug companies, they're really good at marketing. They're going to convince you you need this, you know, $200 supplement a month and blah, blah, blah. And you take it and you go, I don't know, you know, so food first, supplementation second.
Yeah, that just seems wise and reasonable, you know? And I love that so much. So I'm glad you dropped your info there, because that was my next question. I will tag that as well in the show notes. And I just want to express again how grateful I am for you sharing those stories in just such an alive way, and just for your heart and like the authentic caring I can feel. Like, you know, I want you to be my mentor. It's like, it's like you can tell you care about these things and you have the wisdom, and you're in a space in your life where you're just like, how can I pay it forward? And just love these people and help elevate everyone in the health industry and in the quality of their life. I just appreciate that. It's uplifting to be with you and listen to you and talk to you. And I really appreciate the connection. To be respectful of your time, we'll kind of end here. And my last thing is there any message on your heart, any piece of advice, anything you're like, gosh, while I've got the microphone, I really want to be of service in this way. Anything you want to tell us or share with us?
Well, just a couple of things, really. I mean, first of all, you know, your brand is you, okay? Whether you're in marketing, whether you're in business, which most of your listeners are, obviously, or you want to be for that matter, work on you. Work on your self-development. That self-development obviously includes your health. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about that, but I'm also passionate about your self-development in terms of things that you learn, okay? There's so much great information out there. You know, focus on developing yourself. Now, some people say sometimes that almost sounds narcissistic when I say that. It's not. You can't take care of your community if you don't take care of yourself. Okay. If you're not physically fit and you don't take care of yourself mentally as well, all right, you can't take care of your family. Okay. You can't help out your community. God forbid there's a disaster in your community. Well, they want all the weak guys who never lifted anything, or they want the guys who go, hey, you know what? We're going to have a storm and we need to put sandbags up to protect our homes and our businesses. Well, who are they going to call? They're going to call you. Be that guy. Be that girl. Okay. Be that leader in your community. Okay. That's what we need right now in America. All right, more than anything else is leadership. And if you're listening internationally, your country needs it as well. The world needs leaders. And if you're a young person listening, and I hope there's some young people tuning in, you know, you're the leaders of tomorrow. Learn some of this stuff from people like Crystal and myself and other people that are doing podcasts, because, you know, podcasting is not something you're gonna, unless you're Joe Rogan or somebody famous, you're not going to make money doing podcasts. You do podcasts because you got a message to share. Get these messages, and most importantly, just like I did early on from Dr. Peel and from As a Man Thinketh and all of those things, apply some of those messages. Jack LaLanne, some of the other people that we've mentioned here today. And you might not know who some of those people are, and it doesn't really matter. It matters that their messages got to us and that we're sharing them with you, and that you could share them with future generations. And I'll give you one last fast one here, Crystal, is, many years ago, I had lunch with Jim Rohn. And Jim was a great guy. And it was funny because he always had, I don't know if he ever wore his glasses, but he always wore his glasses up here. And he always called you by your last name. So I was Mr. Solleder. And I was having lunch with him here in Dallas with two other gentlemen. And the two other guys were in their 50s. And Jim looked at me at one point and he said, I can't help these two guys, but I can still help you. And I knew what he meant, because Jim was voracious about, you write everything down, you take notes. I ran to my car. You would have thought I was Usain Bolt. I ran to my car. I came back with my day timer and I started taking notes. And he said, now, Mr. Solleder, he said, it's not so much that I'm going to say something so incredibly important. He said, what if this waiter over here comes over and he says something so profound, and you go, wow, that was a life-changing thing that waiter just said. And you don't write it down, and you go home. And then tomorrow you go, I'm going to go back to that restaurant and ask that waiter what he said. You get back, the waiter quit last night. Sorry. Got a phone number for him now? We don't have a phone number. That message is gone forever. So take good notes, people, is my point. Okay. Whether you take them in your phone or whether you take them by writing them down, I would suggest both. You can lose your phone. Okay. Data can crash. Write them down. Still take notes, because everything you heard us say and everything you're going to hear other people say, that's valuable. Like I love that mundane thing that you said, for example, that lady said to you. Okay, that's great. Okay, because it's kind of like the work comes before the result, right? It's the same idea. All of these ideas are invaluable and game changers for you. So make them game changers and learn them from other people, right? We learned them the hard way. I got this gray hair through a lot of ups and downs in my life and in my career. Okay. It's not gray yet, by the way. It's only on the side. But anyway, it's getting there. But just at the end of the day, learn from other people and learn from other people's mistakes, learn from other people's successes, and make them yours. And obviously apply the more successful ones, and you'll have a better life.
Thank you. That's so well said. Well, thank you for being here today in true yoga fashion. I appreciate it. You guys can reach us. Anything we said here or in the show notes. Of course, always reach out with questions, see what's coming up for me and for John, as far as events and how to get in touch with us. And I appreciate you tuning in. So at the end, I say namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzinnyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey, and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zinn Yoga, and have a beautiful day. Sat Nam.